Help! This is a joint submission from a group of War Thunder content creators. The goal is to expose the disgusting practices of this game to a wider audience and seek your support. Around China's Victory Day parade on September 3rd, Gaijin first attempted to add the Chinese-made VT4 MBT and VN1 CIFV to the Japanese tech tree as Thai vehicles. Then, based on a single unsubstantiated claim, they gave Chinese-made ammunition like the Phase 1 APF Stees, BTA-4, and GP-125 missiles to the Ukrainian T-84. Also slated for the Japanese tree, their lack of a moral compass and their malicious intent are plain for all to see. Not only did they break their previous promise to never add Chinese vehicles to the Japanese tree, but they also released the Yamato Damashi, or Spirit of Yamato decal around the sensitive dates of September 3rd and September 18th, a blatant insult to all Chinese players. Simultaneously, the RWR systems on all Chinese helicopters were nerfed into blindness, and the advanced CM502 missile had its damage, speed, and range all crippled. Instead of showing any remorse, Gaijin banned players who pointed out these issues, citing insulting a moderator, while completely ignoring the mountain of public data submitted by Chinese players from Norinco, AVIC, and the various research institutes. The situation is dire. The official Chinese server was shut down years ago due to the toxic community environment, which is now rampant on the international server. Filled with anti-China sentiment, much of it from collaborators of Chinese origin. They don't see the discriminatory treatment of the Chinese tech tree as a problem. They believe it is how things should be, and they actively attack anyone who fights for fairness. Gaijin and these collaborators share a common goal: to use the in-game weakness of Chinese vehicles to win a real-world propaganda war, denigrating China's military technology and smearing the PLA. Faced with corporate discrimination and a toxic community, we have no choice but to seek your help to boycott this insulting game. We know many will call us overly sensitive, but we hope this message spreads far and wide. Here follows a list of the injustices the Chinese tech tree has suffered since its introduction. 1. In 2019, the Chinese tech tree was added to cash in on China's National Day. However, the update was named Night Vision, and the Chinese tree was just a minor sideshow. To this day, it is the only major nation without its own named update. It is the only major nation without its own named update. 2. Early Chinese copy-paste vehicles consistently had higher repair costs, worse performance, and higher battle ratings than their Soviet originals. 3. The PL-11 missile, a simple reskin of the Aspide, was nerfed from 35G to 25G along with it. It was shown in a trailer, but has never been added to the game 4. The J-8B got good missiles, but a blind radar. The J-8F got a good radar, but no radar missiles. This left the J-8F as a useless bomb truck for 2 years. Since they wouldn't give it active radar missiles at the time, why not give us a different J-8 variant that could use semi-active missiles with a good radar? 5. The Chinese helicopter tree was missing for 2 years. Before that, China only had ground and airlines, being the last major nation to get helicopters. The entire Chinese tech tree has been left in a crippled state for years, with very few competitive vehicles. 6. Among the 3 attack drones, the Chinese one has the shortest range and the worst missile pulse damage effects. This is still true today. The AKD-10 was only added with a paltry 1050 SP cost, when drones were already obsolete, making it completely useless. 7. Chinese crew members have long had a giant crew problem, with hitboxes larger than those of other nations. Furthermore, their armor models have been notoriously bugged with holes since the test server, a problem that persists to this day, especially regarding the double standards for gun mantlet and trunnion armor strength. For example, a detailed bug report with structural diagrams by Weibo user 477 showing the incorrect hollow armor on the ZTZ-99A's mantlet and trunnion was deleted. Add by Gaijin without reason, not a single word against the Russian Federation is tolerated. 8. The top-tier Chinese helicopter's RWR is a riddle game. It is common sense that such a modern helicopter wouldn't use such a terrible RWR. Because our military's relevant data is well protected, Gaijin uses the excuse, no detailed information, to shelve the issue indefinitely. This update, they even nerfed the detection bands, so now we can't even play the riddle game. 9 data submitted by a former data miner was selectively implemented. For example, for the PGZ-09, only the -2 degrees of gun depression from the document was added, while the VT and the head shells and the hydropneumatic suspension mentioned in the same document were delayed for a very long time before being added. 10 in submitting data and issues, there are clear double standards and biases against the Chinese tree. For instance, if you submit authentic, public official data, it will be rejected for being classified. Gaijin itself, holding a VT4 manual, chose to selectively implement only the weak aspects. Later, when you submit an issue using the same VT4 manual, you are rejected on the grounds of it being classified. In short, unreliable data gets a not a bug response, while real data is deemed classified and not accepted. 11. Ground attack munitions are deliberately withheld, and missile damage, range, and velocity are nerfed. The CAS capability of the Chinese tree remains one of the worst among all nations. The bug report for the JH-7A, or Flying Leopard, showed it should carry 4 KH-29 missiles, but it was implemented with only 2. All subsequent bug reports requesting a fix were rejected as duplicates. 12. The ZBD-04 Ace missile, penetration, engine RPM, and transmission have all been nerfed. It shares the same external fuel tank layout with armor plates as the T-90M, yet its ammunition detonates and kills the entire crew. While community pressure led by Yabo fixed some issues, many problems still remain. 13.6 The J-10 Ace drag has been sabotaged from the beginning. First they said an interview cannot be used as a source. Then they used an interview transcript from the Test Flight Institute as a source to nerf the J-10 Ace top speed. 14. In the descriptions of Chinese vehicles or in update previews, the text often contains phrases like an imitation of Soviet systems or based on Soviet designs, as if they must assign a father to these vehicles. 15. The ZTZ-99 series has laughably bad protection, a leaky gun breech, high detonation fuel tanks, a giant, rotten crotch lower front plate, a comical 7.1 second reload, a futureless 577mm penetration round, and an incorrect model that gets worse with every fix. 16. The initial aircraft for the Chinese tech tree were consistently released with an inflated battle rating, a deliberately withheld ballistic computer, and worse performance and reward multipliers than starter planes of other nations. 17. The Taiwanese M60 TTS, compared to its American counterpart, was missing the M774 APFSDs and its ERA. Only when a reskinned version was to be given to the Japanese tree was the DM63 shell added. 18. The VT5 was willfully implemented with paper-thin armor, and despite numerous bug reports, it has only received nerfs and BR increases. So, I'd like to ask, the reason it won the Bangladesh trials over the Octopus and Krasnopol was its superior protection. How is its in-game protection worse than the Krasnopol? 19. The J11 BS1493 radar, as a late-generation mechanically scanned radar, has extremely poor performance. Given that the real Russian Air Force is a mess, Gaijin dares not release a Chinese aircraft that can truly compete. 20. From the test server onward, Chinese vehicles have always been the most crudely made and hastily researched. Not only is their performance misrepresented, but their models are full of errors that either take a very long time to be fixed or are never fixed at all. At the same time, parts of the community, the collaborator groups, have always used the excuse of it is a test model and other hogwash to defend these practices. 21. All of the J7's cockpit text is in Russian. Even for the later period, indigenously surveyed and produced J7, the cockpit is still all in Russian. The most hilarious part is that the J11's pylon has a Weibo watermark on it, which was mistaken for a serial number and applied as a texture. 22. When the new Chinese vehicle is to be released, a mountain of video, text, and image data must be submitted to prove its existence. Contrast this with Japan's paper vehicles, Sweden's I guess we can add, its vehicles, or France's latest prototypes that were never fully in service. The difference is night and day. 23. To this day, the Chinese text on decals is merely painted on, with distorted fonts and layouts. Even the August 1st PLA insignia is wrong. And there are numerous mirrored Chinese characters. However, the Japanese tree, which also uses Chinese characters, does not have this problem. 24. The JH-7A has been missing weaponry, and has had an inflated BR for 2 years now. Its airframe and payload drag are immense, making it extremely ineffective, even in ground attack roles. The request to add a PL-5E2 missile was fobbed off with low-tier aircraft, cannot have advanced infrared missiles. Yet, the British, Japanese, and French trees all have low BR top-tier missile carriers. 25. Since the ZTZ-99A was added to the game, it has yet to implement the laser suppression system that was confirmed in an official livestream. Yet, the Russian Federation was the first to get the laser DIRCM because the TY-90 was slaughtering the KA-52. 26. All of China's indigenously developed ammunition has an explosive equivalent TNT value that is worse than other nations. There are even fictionalized Japanese instead of Chinese explosive types, such as the Red Arrow series of missiles, having a warhead type based on the Japanese Type 88 explosive, which is actually a heavy oil bonded perchloric acid mixture used by Japan in World War I. Additionally, the top-tier indigenously developed 500 series aerial bombs are all TNT, with an explosive yield lower than other bombs of the same tier, making their destructive power a level below others. 27. The damage of the incendiary ammunition of China's starter aircraft was groundlessly reduced, which is a disguised cut to income. 28. In the tank biathlon mode, the Chinese ZTZ-96A, despite having a significantly weaker engine, is required to compete on the same stage with a higher BR and better configured T-80U and T-72B3. Why not give the 96B? Afraid that the Russian team wouldn't be able to run faster than the Chinese team. 29. The Taiwanese F-16 AMLU has been missing its AIM-120 for a year and 3 months. To this day, it is still missing the AIM-9M, targeting pods, and various ground attack loadouts. 30. In the active missile update, AJ-11, with a cracked fire control system that only has a single channel lock and a riddle-like RWR, was intentionally rolled out. The number of R-77s is fewer than on the Su-27SM, and the MAWS was only added after public pressure. 31. The J-10 and JF-17 maliciously used the model of the JAB without radar data link, and it took 2 major updates to be fixed. The HUD obstruction issue with the J-10 remains unresolved to this day. 32. From the 96 to the 99 Chu, the reload time for the Chinese autoloader was 7.5 seconds for a long time, while the T-72 of the same period has always been 7.1 seconds. It was only changed later under public pressure. 33. When a new Chinese vehicle comes out, it is bound to have extremely impactful bugs, and it always takes 1 or 2 major updates to be fixed. For example, the Z19E sight not being able to look up, or the Q5L's year-long bug of the nose sight, jamming the pulse signal and the pod view getting stuck in the aircraft's belly, rendering it unusable for a long time. 35. When the Tor M1 was first released, all other AAs had not been revised. The Tor was the first test subject for the new mechanism. Not only was the guidance mechanism terrible, but the massive smoke plume made it impossible to see the target. For a long time, its effectiveness was worse than that of the lower-tier Stinger launcher. 36. The QN506, before entering the live server, had its main missile's ammunition count, and on-the-move launch capability nerfed at lightning speed. The bug where its turret would catch fire on any hit, and couldn't be extinguished, lasted for 1 or 2 years. When a new mechanic is first released for China, either the mechanic itself is more garbage, or the vehicle itself is more garbage. 37. The Z10, a fat pig of a helicopter, with a minimum fuel load of an hour and a half, has mobility far inferior to the Mi-24. It took a year to fix the abnormal airframe weight. Even so, the mobility is still far from its real-life performance. The gun's rate of fire and accuracy, as well as its ground attack payload, are even more heavily nerfed beyond recognition. 38. A classic trick by the Russians, using your lower limit data as the upper limit. The AFT-09's turret, traverse speed, documented as having a minimum of 15 degrees per secant, was implemented in-game as a maximum of 15 degrees per secant. 39. The entire family of Chinese wheeled vehicles lacks a reverse speed of over -10 kilometers per h-hour. They've been clinging to the old wheeled vehicles and refusing to give a new one. Even the ZTL-11, with its already questionable effectiveness, was nerfed and had its BR raised. 40. The PL-5B Sidewinder, due to incorrect G-force data and a 4G launch G-limit, could only be used as a rocket for a long time. The slightest turn of the fuselage would make it impossible to launch the missile. 41. The ZTZ-99A, from beginning to end, has had a hollow gun breach. The turret drive was completely nerfed at the beginning. Initially, its neutral steer was like having a steel bar jammed in the gearbox. It could barely turn. Hitting a small bump would send it flying. It took 3 months to fix. A later update that supposedly fixed the 99A's model and buffed its gun mantlet protection actually nerfed the UFP and turret base armor with 2 consecutive blows, making the protection worse and worse. 42. The PGZ-04A's HQ-6 missile, though its stat card says it has a proximity fuse, does not in practice. Its maneuverability was also nerfed. 43. The PGZ-09's phased array radar is a reskinned garbage radar from the Tunguska. It took nearly 3 years for its hydrop pneumatic suspension to be implemented. 44. The MBT-2000 and VT-4's comical conjoined twin ERA and the massive leaky shot trapping upper front plate. The MBT-2000's initial special FY2 ERA had only 50mm of chemical protection. The VT-4's ERA was only detailed in this update, when it was prepared to be given to Japan, and its protection has been nerfed into oblivion. 45. When the MBT-2000 was first introduced, Yabo used official data to prove that the hull and turret base armor had 550 to 600mm of KE protection. Gaijin dismissed the bug report with the excuse that only the subsequent variant, the Alkhalid, had this protection. But when the Alkhalid was actually released, they just played dumb and refused to acknowledge it. 46. The VT-4A1's various performance aspects are seriously inconsistent with reality. Its combat effectiveness is low, its BR is inflated, it has no protection, no mobility, and no firepower. 47. The Fontaine Q5 basic model, when it first came out, had no missiles and no flares, but was placed at top tier, becoming designated feed for the AIM-9J48. The ZSL-92 was given a fictional AP belt, but not a pure APDS belt. This wheeled IFV was released as an SPA-49. The Z9WA was armed with the unguided AKD-9 for over a year, becoming the only helicopter with manually aimed, high arc trajectory missiles. 50. The Indian-American Tiger IS pilot portrait. The original background fireball was from a downed JH-7A51. The classic Zhang Jiajie background, with a Taiwanese F-100, shooting down a PLAAF aircraft loading screen. After being attacked by public opinion, they did not dare to implement it. And throughout the entire game, there is not a second image of a nation's own forces fighting each other. 52. The PL-8B exclusively has the worst 20 degrees per secant seeker tracking rate among top-tier IR missiles. 53. The Xiaolong or JF-17 carries a missile named the SD-10A, but its performance is actually a reskinned early model of the PL-12. It has the 80km range of the early model, but the weight of the late model 120km version. 54. The PLZ-05 would rather create a shell that doesn't exist in reality than release a more powerful shell with available data. 55. The PLZ-83 received its shell with a proper amount of filler, a whole major update, later than other nations' contemporary howitzers. 56. Chinese radars, from ground to air, completely lack target identification capabilities, with the only exception being the Taiwanese imported Mirage 2057. The JH-7A, radar lacking a scan mode, is just the tip of the iceberg of its problems. 58. The HQ-17's ability to fire on the move was rejected with the excuse of not trusting video footage. 59. The ZBD-04A sight is modeled as TV tracking instead of IR electro-optical tracking, which results in it being unable to lock on if the background is not clean. There was also the previous bug with the gun's incorrect lead calculation. 60. Even when getting a piece of the pie during the air superiority update, few noticed that the Chinese J-11 has 600 kilograms more empty weight from its fuel tank than the Su-27, but without the corresponding increase in fuel load. 61. The PL-8B's 4-element dual-color seeker was hard-coded to the same garbage anti-jamming mechanism as the R-73, plus the ridiculously high flare sensitivity from the test server. 62. All of China's indigenously produced non-reskinned IR missiles in the PL-5 family have a sun avoidance angle larger than even the R-60M. Even the PL-5E2 still has this problem. 63. The J-82F's top speed is worse than the lower BR MiG-21, and its acceleration is always one step behind others. 64. The classic flare-allergic PL-8 is considered to be in the same tier as top-tier missiles like the R-73 and IM-65. The J-10A's 1,000 kilogram guided bomb is still missing in action to this day. 66. The J-10A's 1473 radar has a TWS maximum speed of only 900 meters per s-econt. 67. The JF-17 has various ground attack weapons that have not been released. The only new weapon is a laser-guided rocket. 68. The JF-17 is still missing the Missile Approach Warning System, or MAWS, that was written in the dev server notes. 69. The Chinese F-104G without flares was for a long time at the same BR as other nations' versions, with flares. 70. The WZ-123 AY's 14.5mm HMG model is still the 12.7 QJZ-88 to this day. 71. China's DT P-125 heat round has both the low penetration depth of NATO rounds and the low velocity of Soviet rounds. 72. Chinese tanks are among the worst in top tier for overpressure resistance. They are extremely vulnerable to heat, howitzers, and even small caliber machine guns with very serious leaky armor. 73. After being given fixed 8 times optics, Chinese gunner sights have had an unchanging 6 to 11 times zoom for ages. Even the VT-4 was nerfed to 6 to 10 times. Besides the MBT-2000, there is not a single comfortable gunner. Sight magnification. 74. The VT-5's autoloader internal model uses the largest possible configuration, with the blast door in the downstate. 75. When nerfing the 99A's upper plate, they took out a so-called JM33 versus 99A UFP penetration effectiveness table, directly fabricating data to nerf a Chinese vehicle. The maliciousness of this is extremely egregious. 76. When the O2-wheel tank destroyer was released with a scout drone, it coincided with the 526 income protests, so they directly rolled back the update. The O2-wheeled went from having a drone to having no drone, but the BR was not adjusted, becoming the only 9.0 BR light tank without a scout drone. 77. The 82-degree sloped ERA armor on the VT-4, with extremely low effectiveness against ricochets, has not been fixed to this day. Meanwhile, when the M1 and Leopard 2 had ricochet issues, it took less than a week for a public announcement and a fix. The M1 driver's hatch model still hasn't been made, because it would increase the weak spot area. 78. The VT-5's top speed and horsepower were nerfed out of thin air, because they didn't believe the data on the exhibition board. 79. The DTC-10, Phase 3, shell's penetration was nerfed, and in a situation where it is already not enough, they're stubbornly refusing to improve the reload time. However, NATO vehicles can have their reload rate buffed in order to sell new gift packs. 80. The CM502's top speed is Mach 1.1, average Mach 0.6 to 0.85, but they directly took the minimum value, with a maximum speed of Mach 0.6. Exhibition and manual data are always taken at their minimum value. 81. Yabo's issue to strengthen the Pakistani T-80UD to give it a BTA-4 by modifying the sabot structure to fit the MZ autoloader was rejected on the grounds of inaccurate data. But then they turned around and directly gave it to the Japanese T-84, and even gave it the GP-125-82. The long-barreled WZ-1001 was intentionally not folded with the 99A and placed on another line. 83. The FB-10 missile is excessively expensive, 2,500 SL for one shot, much higher than other missiles. Its over 20 GG load was nerfed to 20 G, and the command guidance was changed to IR lock. The 630's PAA's 20-degree elevation was challenged. Its twin gun speed is too slow, and it lacks a search radar. Previously approved a PDS and head rounds were later confiscated. The high arc trajectory wastes missile energy. 84. With just one sentence, according to an informed source, they gave Chinese-produced ammunition to the Japanese line. At the same time, dozens of suggestions about the CM502 on the issue site were all rejected. This is actually a very simple thing. No matter whether you are a domestic or foreign player, just think about it from a different perspective. If Gaijin put the T-84 into the Soviet line around Russia's Victory Day, how outraged would a large number of European and Ukrainian players be? Or, on their Victory Day, if they added the MiG-25 or K2 to the Japanese line. Previously, with the Singapore line, the source hadn't even shown their face. Yet it was enough to incite opposition to adding the Singapore line to China. If they encountered a similar situation, they would react in the same way. It is obvious that Gaijin had long planned to squeeze the T-84 into the game. It is just that they dare not cross Europe's red lines. They think the old China hands are a soft persimmon that is easy to bully. Not having double standards should be the most basic. Of course, Atom Planet definitely has more than just the Chinese being treated unfairly for a long time. But this does not mean that other players should stand with Gaijin and engage in schadenfreude. The real main contradiction should be directed at BVVD. Chinese players account for a large share of War Thunder's revenue. As long as we unite and stop spending money, they can cause them considerable losses. If they can attract the attention of the state's Iron Fist, that would be even better. To truly deal a heavy blow to Gaijin,